I'm so excited about this topic and grateful for your participation this morning. I want to remind just a couple of things about our commitment as a church to the mental flourishing, not only of ourselves, but our community. So you might remember that our recent capital campaign included an effort for mental health, which included the opening of a counseling center, which is just beyond these doors. We partner with Presbyterian Psychological Services. We have one person practicing out of that space now with the hope of having a second person sometime in late spring. Session last year also gave $40,000 to HopeWay's new teen center last summer, which was a substantial donation in gratitude for the work that they do in our community. It's an incredible resource. So that is specifically because we recognize as a group and as a church that the mental health of our young people is very, very important. You see the news stories about this all of the time. Anecdotally, I can confirm this is very real. And so we're very, very grateful to have HopeWay in our community. Several members of our church are a part of the work that they do. And so we're grateful to have a substantial connection to HopeWay. They're going to tell you a little bit about the work that they do in the Teen Center in particular. But I am very delighted to introduce to you this morning Erin Reis, who is the clinical director of the teen mental health programs at HopeWay. Erin has deep experience in medical settings. She has worked in medical and behavioral ERs. She's been in pediatric and neonatal ICUs and in oncology departments within hospitals. As a social worker, she's provided case management, crisis intervention, and ongoing therapeutic intervention with patients. And she's come out of all of that with a deep appreciation about having an integrated approach to care. She has had numerous roles at HopeWay, both within their, this is so echoey, sorry, I feel thrown off by it a little bit. Both within their inpatient and outpatient services, and now she, in her role, provides supervision for the clinical staff of the teen center. And we also get to welcome Bobbie Mabe, who's a horticultural therapist. She has a program called Growth Through Gardening. She's provided for 10 years horticultural therapeutic services to organizations throughout Charlotte. She's been part of the work of HopeWay since the very beginning. So like a couple months after they opened, you were involved. And so it's really, really wonderful to have her here as well. We have an operations committee in our church. I don't know if people have kind of like lost the plot on this project, but Sarah Shiflett, Gretchen Bottrell, Allie Gilbert, and I are part of that. And that's the group that made the recommendation to session to provide the funds to HopeWay. And so thank you to them for their work. I know there are members of the care committee here this morning too. And in the back is Karen Ortiz, who is, let me get this right, the community engagement specialist. Sometimes in this world, it's hard to bridge the gap between different organizations and how do you get the information from one place to another. And so I'm really, really grateful for Karen. She's a bridge builder and she's here to provide some information about HopeWay. If after the service, you might like to know a little bit more about the work that they do, she's got some great resources back. So let me turn it over. Please welcome Erin and Bobbie.
Morning. Thank you so much for having us. We're really glad to be here. Anytime we get to talk about HopeWay and the work that is done there, we get very excited about it. So we really appreciate you guys, all of your support, and having us here to learn a little bit more about what we do, and specifically how we are working to treat the symptoms of anxiety for our clients in our counseling and our integrative therapies. Erin's going to start. She knows all the clinical stuff. I'll jump in on the integrative.
I have my sorry, excuse me, I have my own notes opened up and now I just lost me from here. I'm so sorry.
Sure. So what we do at HopeWay basically is we are serving clients who are dealing with extreme stressors, major life changes, things that are keeping them from really being successful in their lives. So they come to us in a state where they really need support. And some of the things we do there, aside from just your normal kind of clinical one-on-one therapy and then group therapy sessions, are we have integrative therapies mixed in there. When I came to interview at HopeWay, one of the things I fell in love with immediately was the enriched program. So we have a very holistic program that incorporates things like a nutrition kitchen, horticultural therapy, of course, my love, music therapy, what am I saying? Rec therapy, and I'm missing one. But we have all of these things, yoga, thank you. Cannot forget yoga. But we have all of these things that work toward treating anxiety and the symptoms of anxiety. And Erin's going to start kind of going through the symptoms and how we treat them. And then we'll talk a bit more about how all of these various therapies work to do that as well.
I thank you. I apologize, and I'm grateful for your patience with my technological issues. So welcome to Untangling the Anxious Brain. We're very excited to be here today to talk a little bit more about anxiety. This has been very prevalent among all of our campuses. So as we were talking about, we have multiple programs at HopeWay. So I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that. But first, I want to say thank you to our corporate partners. So before I get started, we just want to take a minute and point out, that we get really excited to come for these educational opportunities, such as this one today. And as part of our Covington educational program, I'd like to give a special thank you to our 6 diamond partners and diamond sponsors. So here at HopeWay, we are a nonprofit created to fill the gap between hospital and home, and we opened in 2016. So what we recognized was that there were, there's just a gap in care. So we opened our residential adult program, and we have at that adult campus, we have residential for 18 and older, and we have a partial hospitalization program and an intensive outpatient. This is evidence-based integrated psychiatric care. As Bobbie started to tell you, the integrative care. You can hear me? Change the microphone over here. Or yeah. Okay. More technological issues. Yeah. Good. Second time this week I made that joke. Okay, and so we have a holistic based program. So like we were talking about, we have art therapy, music therapy, recreational therapy, yoga, and we have a group that's based in our learning kitchen, which is all about the mind-body connection. And then of course we have our wonderful horticultural therapist here. No, right? I would never forget Olive. And that's all about, we grow our food and we actually bring it to our kitchen that we have on site, and our clients actually eat the food that they grow there in our greenhouse, which is really amazing. That's actually something we've even recently brought to our teen campus. So they're growing their food as well in our eating disorder program and our teen program. And as you can see, this beautiful black English lab up there, that's our therapy dog. She's very popular. Her name is Olive. And she actually goes to all of our programs as well. She works very hard. Although I do think she's union. So as I was saying, we have our adult residential treatment and day programs, so partial hospitalization programs. That's where they come to our campus Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then we have our IOP program. So IOP is traditionally a 3-day-a-week program where they come for 3 hours at a time. The difference in a partial hospitalization program and an IOP, besides the amount of hours that you spend there, is more so that you don't really have a psychiatrist and kind of have a therapist. So you would still see your traditional outpatient psychiatrist and therapist, but you're there for group therapy. We are a cognitive behavioral therapy based program. So we do more CBT groups, but we do bring in some dialectical behavioral therapy groups. Forgive me, and we'll be open to questions if you have any questions about that later. We did, as we heard last year, I can give you the date of my program. I'm the clinical director of the teen program. So we opened on May 22nd last year. Not that I'm counting. And so we have a partial hospitalization for teens. And so that program also Monday through Friday that we run from 8:30 to 3:30. And it's very similar in that it's a group-based program and we have integrative therapies come. The difference in that program is that we actually incorporate 2 hours a day for school. So we have 2 licensed teachers on staff where they can get educational support and they work with their school system to get the schoolwork on homebound instruction. We also have an eating disorder program that we have one group for teens and one group for young adults. We do have a specialized therapist and doctor for veterans and first responders, and an outpatient HopeWay Psychiatry and Associates that treats children, adolescents, and adults, which recently run in network to support our mission to making mental health treatment accessible. So this is just a couple pictures of our new teen and eating disorder campus. On the bottom right is our learning kitchen, and that's our lobby. So it's really beautiful, just a lot of windows. Bobbie can attest. So anxiety versus I keep talking. So the next slide is about anxiety versus anxiety disorders. So, and when does that become something that we really need to look at, right? A lot of what I hear when somebody comes to HopeWay, and just a little bit of background about me, I've been with HopeWay for almost 8 years. So I started at the adult campus, even though I had a lot of experience working with kids, as you heard from my background. I came because I do a lot of work with families. And when you have young adults coming to the adult campus, that's kind of the primary population. And the question that I get is like, how can I make it so I never feel anxiety ever again? Valid thing to feel, and it's just a thing, right? They're like, I never want to feel this way. And that's what I told them. I get it. Like if you aren't able to go to school because it just feels so overwhelming, or you haven't been able to go to work, or we've had some people where it's just been they experience agoraphobia and they haven't been able to leave their room, their house. Like it feels so overwhelming. What the point that we try to get to in their treatment is kind of understanding that there's a sweet spot, right? You want to be able to feel anxious. We need it, right? It's a protective factor in our lives. But we don't want to feel too anxious or not anxious enough, right? For teens, I'll talk about that for a second because that's my current population, right? They need a certain amount of anxiety because otherwise they won't ever hand in homework. Or they're not afraid to get the consequence of like sneaking out of the house, right? So they're just like, well, I don't care, so that's fine. Or if we're like, oh no, if we don't feel anxious, we're like, okay, well, the deadline's coming, but oh well, right? That feeling in your stomach, that's like, okay, I need this done by this amount of time. We need that, right? Because that allows us to then hand in the work, so we get the paycheck, so we can get paid and pay our mortgage, right? Keep a job. So when it becomes an anxiety disorder is when it interferes with your life, right? And typically in multiple areas of your life. So what we wanted to finish on today is really like, how long does it last, right? That's another piece of it, because sometimes if it's just one certain area, you're right. If it's just one
Googling side.
nobody can relate. We've never felt that way before. Right, sometimes that's normal, right? It's normal to have anxiety when all the technology shuts down in a presentation. If it has a start and end point, right, then maybe like it's not the generalized anxiety. So some anxiety disorders, common ones, generalized anxiety disorders, that has a common what we call comorbidity, something like depression, bipolar, mood disorders, right? ADHD typically. So, or it could also have distracted. And it can lessen significantly when we have a diagnosis and we're getting treated for it. So that sometimes when you have that comorbidity with a mood disorder, you're able to get maybe on an antidepressant, it might be all of those things, but the therapy component, which we believe at HopeWay, is kind of a marriage of the two, right? You kind of need the medication and to help that. So that's really our approach to anxiety. So anxiety can show up across the lifespan in different ways. Now, of course, there's physicality, like some similarities, but some of the presentation or the worries that you'll hear about can be really good. So it's important to know some of the signs, because, you know, as humans, we're responsible for a lot of things. We're, you know, we take care of young kids, but then we also maybe take care of aging parents, and maybe they're both experiencing anxiety, but presenting to us in different ways. I'm going to anxiety in children. So, anxiety in children, we just going over some brief kind of overview of the physical nature of anxiety altogether, right? Everybody kind of can talk about when they feel anxious, like how do you feel? Does anybody want to say how they feel anxious?
Heartbeat's bad.
I get anxious when something doesn't go right. When I put something and it was like something doesn't get back to me soon, but if I get back to me, I feel better. And then I also get anxious when something goes wrong with like a flight chill, so how it goes smooth, you know.
Yeah, so you want something to go right, so you feel like pressure. Good job. Yeah. When your heart beats faster, perfect. So you feel like my heart beats faster, so maybe also shortness of breath.
Stomach hurt.
Your stomach hurts, right? Sweating, perfect. Probably all could see that we and Daryl were in it together. I was getting distracted, so I had like the concentration. So this also shows up in other physical ways where we can have like difficulty sleeping, right? We brought up stomach hurting. So there's also like nausea that comes along with that, maybe some dizziness. These are the commonalities of like the physicality of anxiety that tends to show up throughout all of the phases. Then there's like other clinical manifestations that can be different. And so we're going to go over 4 different phases of life that can show up with it. So anxiety in children, so we're talking younger children here, not the teens. But so this one's very interesting because what you tend to see here is anxiety, and there's a rule out that sometimes anxiety can come as a symptom of ADHD, right? Because when you have elementary school children, this is when ADHD behaviors start to pop up. So you want to be mindful of that. So you have avoidance, somatic symptoms, which we just talked about, sleep problems, excessive need for reassurance. So that's something like maybe a little bit of need behavior, right? And that verbal need for reassurance. You might even notice that in other ages, might not just be anxiety, but could be some types of interpersonal relational things, but that's that person that, are we okay? Are you okay? Are you mad at me? Do you have like, I see some people smiling, shaking their head. Everybody knows somebody like that. Poor school performance, and you might be questioning yourself, saying, weird, like, because I think that this person knows what they're doing. Why are their grades not? Explosiveness and oppositional behaviors. This is the age you can get an oppositional defiance diagnosis. What I'm seeing in my work is I'm getting a lot of kids that have this diagnosis, but maybe they have some other things going on. So I'm just seeing this diagnosis. It's just an interesting thing. And then changes in appetite, right? So when you find someone who's very anxious, they might not be hungry, or they might be very hungry. That's the interesting thing about mental health, is that it shows up so different in everybody. And you all are the experts in yourselves or in the people in your lives. And so as therapists, mental health providers, we tend to rely on what we call collateral information. We get information from other people. We say, like, is this something you would normally see in your loved one? Do they normally sleep like this, or do they normally eat this way? Or has their mood normally fluctuate like this? What are your thoughts about it? Because if then they're saying, no, like this started around this time, or this started around like with this med change, that's something that we keep in mind.
Oh, I bet this is the old one. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah.
It's fine. Anxiety and teen. So what you're gonna notice in everything that's happening, great, they just are about their friends. And that development is appropriate, right? The friends become the things of the world instead of the family, which is hard for us as family members, because we want them to still engage in family dynamics. But that becomes their primary focus, their primary burden. So there's more social anxiety as opposed to family focus. So the social anxiety becomes about, like, my appearance, am I fitting in? And also performance anxiety. So when I'm going to go like perform this sport, I want to do well at that sport, but also how the other people at the sport do well. Luckily at HopeWay on Friday, we had the quarterback from the Panthers come and talk to our team about it, and they were, for kids, they were so amazing. And they feel the pressure of knowing that other people are talking about the other people. They have a lot of insight. And he said, he has to learn to block that out, but it did come with time and age and growth. Our brain doesn't stop developing until maybe 28. So we have, again, increase and decrease in sleep or appetite, performance anxiety, sports. I put sports up here, but it really could be like, if you're doing the drama club and you're going to play, like anything, any type of performance in that social setting. And then irritability and restlessness as well. Anxiety in young adults. So anxiety disorders commonly begin in early adulthood and have episodes of remission and relapse. So I wanted to make that very, very clear that the DSM, like anxiety disorders, commonly begin at this age. And it's okay to have remission and relapse. A lot of people feel like, okay, I've gone to therapy and that's done. They feel a lot of shame and guilt if they need to go back and receive more help. Anxiety is something that when you have like a new curveball in life, which as we go through life and there's just new challenges that come along with it, it tends to pop back up. And so this is a hard diagnosis a lot of times for people to have, because they kind of feel like it's like, in young adulthood, they have a lot of work-related anxiety because they're figuring out, okay, how do I get a job? How do I maintain this job? There's also this financial stressor of keeping up with the Joneses. You know, there's people around me who maybe are farther along in their career. Should I be there? Because a lot of should that they put on themselves. So we call this cognitive distortion, where they basically have these thoughts where they say, I must do this, I should do this, and that's their internal dialogue. And so that's something in therapy that we challenge, and we also challenge their self-talk when we put them on trial. We also do something called decatastrophizing when we have catastrophic thinking, because commonly with anxiety, you go to the worst possible thing. Right, so I kind of gave you an example before, like, well, you need to, you know, make the money to pay the mortgage and keep up, right? Like I kind of went through each step. Well, an example I gave to the kids, I'm like, well, you know, did anybody ever tell you like we need to talk? Well, yeah, but what do you think when someone says that? I'm like, well, if it's your partner, then you're breaking up. If it's your boss, then you're fired. Yeah, that's catastrophic thinking, right? But catastrophic thinking could be like, okay, my boss is firing me, so then I can't pay my bills, and I want health insurance, so I'm gonna lose my house. You know, I'm gonna be homeless, and I'm gonna have to like go live under a bridge in a box, and it's gonna rain, and then the box is wet, and then like they can spiral, right? When you're anxious like that, you can get it far down that line. And so that's the kind of thought process that we have to like work backwards from. And then again, they have this similar physical symptoms, increase, decrease sleeping or appetite. We have, again, work-related anxiety, irritability, restlessness, and relationship stressors. So typically at this age group, there's an actual struggle with assertiveness when it comes to anxiety. Is an interesting, just an interesting development in that specific age range. And then anxiety in older adults. So commonly undiagnosed and undertreated in the geriatric population, still irritable, still restless. Symptoms commonly overlap with medical diagnoses, such as hyperthyroidism, and they experience somatic symptoms such as pain. So late life onset, typically comorbid with major depressive disorder. In older adults recognize cognitive and physical decline. So what we really see at HopeWay is the last one. We see a lot of behavioral life transitions, right? So like whether that's that 18 to 25 range of like, oh, we're going to college and then that was hard. We don't really know how to make that transition out of our parents' home, or like a divorce or significant, you know, relationship ended, or retirement. And what is my identity post my career? Figuring that out. And the beauty of group therapy is really all of those people helping each other. Like I've seen an 18-year-old help somebody in retirement being able to figure out their relationship. That's actually helps them then reduce their anxiety because then they figure out, okay, well, now my identity is kind of reinvested in my family. And now the 18-year-old is like, well, I understand my parents better and I can communicate with them, or so it's really a beautiful thing to see. So I just wanted to touch on the brain for a second. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. The gray, that's the brain stem here. The gray matter in the middle is the limbic system. It's actually thought to be evolutionarily like very old, older than the frontal cortex and the brain matter around it. And funny enough, it's responsible for emotion regulation, memory. So we have the amygdala in there. It's a little almond-shaped thing. And that is to help with our emotion regulation. And it's thought that with anxiety, because we don't know as much as we want to about the brain, it's thought with anxiety that it struggles to manage our emotion regulation, and that the prefrontal cortex over here is, it's overactive and struggling to manage it. So we touched on this when I asked you all how you felt when you were anxious, anxiety and the body. So we kind of said that we had shortness of breath, racing heart, stomach aches, headaches. We didn't really touch on like tense muscles, which is a very common one as well. Sometimes also people experience like radiating pain throughout their body. We also can feel what we call dissociation. So some people will say like, I felt like I reached a point where I was living outside of my body because I felt so anxious that I didn't feel like I could be in my body. Has anybody that's that? I hear that a lot from the clients at our campuses where I just couldn't even sit in my body. And so what we'll do when we hear that is it's another slide, it's the two slides.
I think so. The next one is the anxiety avoidance.
Yeah.
So,
What we have here is the cycle of avoidance. And so what the people do when they have those kind of uncomfortable feelings and dissociation is what they'll try to avoid anything that triggers that. So they have so they're feeling anxious and they're experiencing any type of symptom in their body, because anxiety shows up in everybody. Some people actually are surprised that they're feeling anxious until they come to work and they're like, oh, I didn't realize that all of these were symptoms of anxiety. Sometimes people are so good at masking their anxiety during the day that it does just come up in their symptoms at night. So it's really fascinating to see how it can be different for everybody. But you'll see we have anxiety happening here, and then they feel so uncomfortable that they'll do anything to avoid it. So that's what we're seeing like with the teens, like school refusal coming up, right? Like young children who kind of have internalized this like I can't do it mentality, right? When they maybe haven't gotten that ADHD diagnosis yet, but they are really struggling with their schoolwork and they don't really know why. They're like, well, they're so distracted, maybe they don't have the language to communicate that to you. Then they're like, well, I just don't do that. I'm not doing it. I'm not going. Or, you might have a perfectionist who's just feeling really anxious and they're like, just overwhelmed with work. And so I'm just not gonna do it. Then they avoid it. Well, the thing is, once you avoid it, oh my gosh, it's immediate relief. I feel so much better. So that is an unhealthy coping mechanism because it provided short-term relief. It didn't act, it's not going to be continuous. You can't do that forever, right? Like a 5-year-old not going to school for the rest of the time. My parents can get education on that. But it brings this relief. But then now it's just going to intensify my anxiety. Nothing ever treated my anxiety in this cycle. But so then the next day, my anxiety is just so much higher because I never actually did anything about it. I just put kind of a Band-Aid over it. And then I was like, so now I didn't go to school on Tuesday, but now Wednesday morning's here. And oh no, now I have Tuesday and Wednesday work to do. Uh-oh. So now I'm more anxious, right? And so you could see how then I'd be like, well, avoiding it the first time worked really well. Let me try and do that again. So it's the unhealthy, right? That's where we learn unhealthy coping skills. So typically, when we say unhealthy coping skills, people think a little bit even further down the line, but we can have unhealthy coping skills that are avoidance, right? Instead of just tackling it head on. The effective strategy to manage anxiety. Tip. So tip is a distress tolerance scale that is under the dialectical behavioral therapy umbrella, or DBT as it's called. So this is kind of an offshoot of cognitive behavioral therapy. So this is one that is very, very popular with our clients. And when I brought up that term dissociation before, it's actually very helpful to bring somebody out of the dissociation. So I kind of look at it like a scale in itself, but some people just pick out of the 4 options. But we have, it's an acronym. So temperature, intense exercise, paced breathing, and progressive muscle relaxation. We're starting with temperature. This tends to be everybody's favorite. The goal of using temperature is actually to kind of work within your mammalian reflex and bring all of your blood flow to your core, right? And so what you want to do is change your body's temperature by splashing cold water on your face. So a lot of our clients actually just use ice. They'll hold ice in their hands, they'll put it on the back of their necks, the inside of their wrists, holding ice packs. Sometimes in the winter, they'll like go outside with short sleeves on and take some deep breaths, feel the cold air in their lungs. Sometimes they'll use this and just take like a quick cold shower and then turn it over to the hot water. But this is definitely their favorite one for sure. Then we have intense exercise. So while going for a 5-mile run would definitely be intense exercise for me, this is not what they're talking about. When you go for a long run, you actually are using your larger muscle groups, which becomes meditative. So what they're looking at is like 20-second, kind of like a HIIT exercise. So walk quickly, jump up and down, run, climb the stairs. They're looking at like jumping jacks for 20 seconds. So what they want to do is to dysregulate your breathing. So you're forcing your body to regulate your breathing. Okay. The teens like this one, but they struggle to figure out how to incorporate it in your life. Adults are a little bit more receptive to being like, hey, you can go to the bathroom and do like wall squats. They're like, oh, okay. I can't tell you how many people I've had before family session literally doing push-ups on the floor of my office. Because they're stressed. Paced breathing. So there's a couple different types of paced breathing. You know there's box breathing, what other people call combat breathing. It's like breathe in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, do that 4 times. This one, it says breathe in for the count of 5, hold, and then exhale for the count of 7. I personally like to breathe in for 4, hold for 7, and exhale for 8. I need to count different numbers because otherwise, again, it becomes very meditative for me. And then my mind's like, progressive muscle relaxation, tense and relax each muscle group from head to toe. So it becomes a little bit meditative. Again, this one is a little bit tricky. You kind of have to figure out the one that you like. So like I said, a lot of people like to start at temperature, maybe work their way down. Because if you start progressive muscle relaxation and you have like shortness of breath, ruminative thoughts, it doesn't work so well, especially for the teens. They're like, yeah, forget it. Get out of here. So they like temperature more. They're like, give me the ice that you want it. Okay, you can go back. You want to
Let me take the slides.
Sure.
I want to put those in accident. There we go.
Yeah. This is just a fun little anxiety girl, able to jump to the worst conclusion in a single bound. Super catastrophizer. Finally, your turn.
Hello. So I'm going to talk about the fun part of therapy. If there's a fun part, it's us, it's the integrative. So we are kind of sneaky because we come off as very fun and enjoyable, but we are the place where you get to practice these skills to take with you outside, right? So there's a lot of really hard work being done every day for our clients in their therapy sessions, in their group therapy sessions. And then they get to come out to rec therapy or horticultural therapy or music therapy. And we seem like we're just kind of having a good time, but really this is where we get to deal with all of those somatic symptoms that are happening
and the racing thoughts. Most of our activities are hands-on, and you have to be where you are to complete them. So I know in horticulture, we have a lot of activities where I will have people kind of repeating activities, starting seeds indoors. This is a recent thing we did. We've got all of our tomatoes and peppers and squash plants started, and it's very repetitive. And what I'll hear from clients, of course, in the beginning, they're like, oh my gosh, it's forever. You know, it's a little bit anxiety provoking, but what happens is at the end, they've kind of meditated while planting these seeds. And so again, they're like, oh my gosh, I just feel so relaxed. So these integrators are in places where we can actually get people in a state where they're using their skills and understanding how those actually impact them. So we have a lot of these, again, I get people in rec therapy who they're enjoying the social interaction of playing cornhole or kickball with each other. And they're just right there, they're focused, and it really calms them and gets them to be in the now. Integrative therapies are all about outward focus rather than inward focus, which if you think about anxiety, right, it's a lot of thought of, oh my gosh, I have to do this. Oh my gosh, this is coming up. How am I gonna do that? And so, you know, when you're in the garden, you don't have to think about that. What you're focused on is like, okay, I gotta get this plant in here, or I gotta get these seeds in a row, but you see your immediate actions, you know, and so you get that sense of accomplishment right away. And most recreational and music therapists, all of those, have the same component of being very hands-on and skill-based so that you can take them with you outside. It's pretty easy. So how many of you are gardeners? Okay. How many of you enjoy golf or bowling or any sort of hobby? Great. How many of you enjoy listening to music in the car or at home? Right. So these are all things we do. So it's not a huge stretch to now make them work for us. So an activity in music therapy would be making a playlist to help you get through something that you find difficult. For a lot of our clients, that's just getting out of bed. It can be very difficult to get out of bed. So you can start your playlist and it kind of motivates you to get out of bed. Or, you know, what else could be difficult? Cleaning the house is another. Oh, I hate to clean the house. I am included. I hate it. I would rather weed my garden for hours than clean my house. Probably because I have teenagers, which cause me anxiety. And I'm gonna have to do it every day. I know this, but so these are different things you can use really easily without changing too much of your daily life. Golfing, one of my favorite activities. Bowling. Whenever my kids are anxious about something, we engage in recreational therapy. So you can see where that we use that in our life anyway, but now we're teaching these skills and reminding our clients to utilize those in a way that works for them. So if you think about the ones we have at HopeWay, yoga is a big one for the clients. Most of them are working on keeping your breath and your body, kind of keeping that connection without being anxious about it. Okay. Oh, my favorite. Okay, so when I interviewed at HopeWay, one of the things that really impressed me was the holistic approach that was there. So we have all of these different integrative therapies. Horticulture is rare. So a lot of the clients, when they say why they chose HopeWay, it will be one of the special integrative therapies we have, whether it's pet therapy or the nutrition kitchen or horticulture, because they really aren't offered in many programs. So I was really impressed by how holistic the program was and the recognition of how important these different aspects of our lives are to our health and our mental health. And that they are all connected. So we work really hard to focus and teach the clients about our gut-brain connection. And that happens with a connection between the gardens where they're growing their own food. They take them to a learning kitchen. They learn about, you know, healthy eating styles. And now we have a chef. I don't know if y'all heard this. We have a chef in our cafeteria and we're so excited. He is a farm-to-table chef. I think Restaurant Constance is his restaurant here in Charlotte. We are so excited because it again shows that we really want a holistic program for our clients to be as healthy as possible and to see this happening throughout their day. So in the garden specifically, we have a lot of ways that we're positively impacting our lives. And for those of you who are gardeners, you probably already know how you relieve your stress when you're outside in the garden, or you just feel better when you go back in. So for my clients, a lot of them don't love to be outside. They have different issues with touching soil. And so what I say is my goal for them to help them reach their goals is to be outside during their designated horticultural therapy time. Being outdoors is innately healing. So they can get a break from the indoor lighting and, the airflow, and then you get some fresh air. They get their sensory input as well. So you can feel the wind on your face, you can smell the air, you can watch the clouds move. All of those things are really important for our brains. In that old part of our brain that we have a section that is designated to keeping us alive through focusing on what is happening in nature. When we don't use that, we feel more anxious and depressed. So when I have clients who are like, I wonder if it's going to rain today. Okay, what do you see in the clouds? And they're like, oh my gosh, I forgot that I checked the clouds. I didn't even realize I do it anymore because we wake up and look at our phones. I do the same thing. But man, if you step outside and you're like, they said it was going to be 75 degrees today, but I smell the rain in the air. And I know that that sun might come out later, but it's not out now. And we're probably going to get some rain first. Our brains told us that forever, and we're distancing ourselves from that. So engaging in horticultural therapy and nature in general is really a great way to step into health and away from anxiety and depression. It is very approachable, so there's something for everybody. If you're a bird watcher, great. If you love to mow your lawn, that is horticultural therapy. There are, anytime you're engaging in nature, is golf, it's horticultural therapy. I stand behind that. So anytime you're out hiking, any of that. It's a very social thing too, which helps with anxiety. So we're out there in groups, but families will garden together. I garden with my children. I garden with my mother growing up. So it can be a family thing, it can be friends. We have community gardens. Do you all have gardens here at the church? Maybe? Oh, we'll work on that later. Many different community locations and organizations have gardens within them. So it is a place to connect, which also reduces anxiety. So if you think about isolation, that increases anxiety. So we're reducing isolation, and then just getting your hands in soil. I don't know if you know this, but there are microbes in the soil that we absorb through our skin. So when you're walking barefoot on the beach, you are absorbing healthy microbes that increase the serotonin or happy hormone in our brain and lower cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So anytime you can safely get your hands or feet in the soil, it's great for your brain. So we've got social, we've got people growing their own food. So we talked about the brain-gut connection. Anytime you're growing your own food, it is shown that you're making healthier food choices. So if you think about being out in your garden, you got some delicious little cherry tomatoes, you're gonna pop those in your mouth, right? You're excited about the salad that you grew. So all of these things are happening, and it's very, again, holistic. I want to use that term over and over because we are not just dealing with one aspect of mental health. We're dealing with all of that in several ways. So I am extremely excited to be able to provide this for HopeWay, and see the benefits all the time. When I see people come out of the building, they can come out like this, or it's hard work that they're doing. But man, an hour later, they're going in smiling and talking to each other. And that's part of the reason I love my job. I get to see those instant changes, and I know that they just pile on to the client. Every day they feel that little bit of happiness. They go to rec therapy and they're, messing around and playing games and remembering that part of their life that they might not be doing anymore. By the time people come to HopeWay, there's not a whole lot of interest in a lot of things. And so we're reactivating or introducing new things that you can do in your life very easily for specific outcomes.
Take a picture. Oh,
Yep,
can you go back one
that's
more
right.
time? And I could just go on putting shadows in there by accident. Yeah.
Wanted to run out with the ways that you can in your life that is feeling anxious and whether that's having anxiety or anxiety disorder. So I know it's very easy to say to someone like, hey, like think positively, like you have so much going for you, you have so much to be thankful for. Or it could always be worse, or hey, relax. Like those can be perceived by somebody who's really struggling. And this goes across in mental health in general as like kind of invalidating of their experience, even though it might be true. So we can try one of these instead. We want to validate first, and then we can maybe help them challenge things later. So like your feelings are valid. I'm here to listen. Like what you're going through is difficult. I'm here for you. And I can see you're having a hard time. This is my favorite one, honestly, because it's short and sweet and it doesn't make you into like a mini therapist. Just like hearing like, wow, that sounds really hard, I think is so powerful for somebody who's going through a hard time, right? It's just saying like, hey, I heard you and that sounds rough. That's most of the time what somebody wants to hear. Some other communication tips, right? It's about being a reflective listener and just an open, active listener. But we really focus on I statements, right? Like I feel blank when you blank. It sounds very rudimentary, but what we don't realize in our culture right now is that it's not very common. And honestly, in our family sessions, which we do with every team every week at our team campus, they feel robotic. They don't like it because it's not the way we communicate with each other, right? Like I feel fill in the blank with this feeling when you blank, like next time can you blank? But really that's the way it actually doesn't make other people feel as defensive when you communicate that. And it down the road, we don't end up doesn't feel as robotic down the line. Listening to understand versus listening to respond. So like reflective statements after somebody speaks, just saying something like, hey, so what I'm hearing you say is that like you're feeling blank. And they could say yes or no. Most of the time the teens in my program are like, no. And that's okay. They don't have to, that's all right. But then they know that I'm really trying to understand them and I really want to know where they're coming from, right? Validate the person, which we just talked about, and being aware of your body language. That part's really hard, right? All the kids laugh at me because they've got expressive eyebrows. And so I have to be mindful of that and when I do therapy. But that's something that, everybody has their own thing. Now you're all looking at my eyebrows. We all have to be careful of like what our things are, right? And self-awareness is a really hard thing. It's constantly being. That's it, HopeWay. I'm super grateful for you all listening to me go on and being patient with us through our technical difficulties in the beginning and my own anxiety through that. So thank you. I didn't know if we still have.
Yeah. I'm not sure that we do.
Okay.
Are you all willing to stick around for a little bit if people do have questions?
Yeah, I think we could stick around. We could be in the back with Karen or Reis at our HopeWay table and you all.